So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of how to protect against insider threats. My name is Gail Carpenter. I am the Head of Field and Channel Marketing here at Logpoint, and I'm pleased to be joined today on this webinar by my colleague Paul Gower, who is the Director of Sales Engineering. The webinar will last about 30 minutes, and it will be recorded, and it will be available as an on-demand version in the next couple of days. If you do have any questions at all during the session, please put them into the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will get to them at the end of the session. So what are we going to be talking about today? So for the first couple of minutes, I'm just going to be talking about the challenge around insider threats and some of the challenges that that organisations are faced around this topic. We'll just be talking quickly about how it happens and some of the recommendations that we give our customers and partners about how to combat this particular problem. I will then be handing over to Paul, who will be taking you through a demo of how Logpoint manages this the insider threat, and then we'll be having a Q&A session. So as I mentioned, any questions at all, put them into the Q&A box and we will get to them at the end of the session. So before we go into a bit more detail about how insider threats actually happen, I just wanted to share some statistics with you that was taken from a blog post written by one of my colleagues recently about the scale of the issue around insider threats within organisations. And some of these statistics are extremely interesting. Every year, 34% of organisations are hit by insider attacks. And this isn't a small organisation problem or a large organisation problem. This can happen to any organisation across the board, whether it's a 5-person organisation or a 5,000-person organisation. And it also happens across industry as well. Any organisation that has employees, this can happen to. On average, it takes 197 days to detect an attack, which is over 6 months. And then it takes another 77 days to recover from an attack. So if you take the time frame from an attack happening to it actually being solved within your organisation, it can take up to 9 months, which is obviously rather a worrying thought. And the main problem with insider threats is it is extremely difficult to distinguish what is harmful and what is just regular activity. So you know what is the difference between somebody just doing their day job and just accessing the systems compared to something that is being harmful and malicious to an organisation. And this is one of the main reasons why these insider threats take so long to either detect and then to recover from. So how does the insider threat actually happen? Well, as we all know, insider threats are one of the top causes of data exfiltration, data leaving the organisation. And there is 2 major ways that this happens. You have your malicious insider threats. Now, of course, nobody likes to think that anybody in their organisation wants to steal data from them or deliberately harm their business. But unfortunately, this does happen on a daily basis. And how people do this is in a number of different ways. This could be that because they're leaving the company and they just want to take some data with them, or they could actually want to do harm to the organisation. And as I said, there's a number of different ways that malicious insiders do this. They can secure data to a third party. Often they email data outside the organisation to either a Gmail or a Hotmail account. They could upload it onto a hard drive or a cloud share. And one of the major reasons why this happens is that particularly people who have technical know-how, they know the systems, they know the policies, they know the procedures, and they know some of the gaps in these areas that they can exploit. Why they do this is, as I said, that often they just want to go into a new organisation, they want to take data with them. Basically doing it for their own benefit, or potentially they could be doing it for somebody else. In most cases, insider breaches are not malicious. They are things that happen by an employee completely randomly or carelessly. And this could be, again, a number of different ways that they do this. Again, it's things like vulnerable passwords. You know, everybody likes to think they have a very secure password, but people still use their birthdays or their names. Not being aware of an organisation's security policies. One of the biggest causes of insider threats is around people clicking on suspicious emails. This causes malware to come into the organisation that enables hackers to compromise credentials. So most of the time it is not insiders doing things maliciously, it's just them being careless. But of course, being careless is just as detrimental to an organisation than those that are malicious. So what are the consequences when this happens? Now, just because something happens from an insider threat doesn't mean the consequences are any less than when it's hit by an external source. As I mentioned, ransomware attacks are an extremely common consequence of somebody clicking on a phishing email. Of course, anytime there's a data breach, that does cause issues around compliance, particularly for those industries that are in highly regulated industries. Of course, there's a lot of reputational and financial damage that is done to an organisation, particularly if this type of news gets out into the public domain. And also the operational disruption can be extremely significant when it comes to an insider threat attack. Because if you know that somebody within your organisation has actually been the cause of this particular attack, then often you have to stop people accessing systems and areas of the business that they normally would, so you can identify the culprit. And of course, as with any cyber attack, the more attacks or breaches that you have, it significantly increases the cybersecurity costs to your business. So, as I said, insider threats are just as much cause just as bigger consequences as those that come from the outside. So, what are the recommendations that we provide to our customers and partners around, how do you combat the insider threat? So, the biggest thing and the most essential thing to do when dealing with an insider threat attack is it is essential to identify abnormal behaviours against the behaviours that users use on a day-to-day basis. And it's also essential to detect signs of potential threats. So how we recommend people do this is that they construct a foundational behavioural profile for users and entities. So what is the things that you would expect on a day-to-day basis? And then anything that happens outside of that, then it's you assign a risk score to it, so you can identify the risk of any of these deviations. So, for example, you might have users that only log in between 9 and 5. If somebody logs in at 3 o'clock in the morning, that would constitute as abnormal behaviour, and then that would assign a risk score against that deviation. And one of the things that we also recommend is to have a complete risk overview and detection from various entity types. So not just looking at the behaviour of the users, but the behaviours of the servers, the share sites, the websites, to see if there's any abnormal behaviour that is actually affecting these different types of entities. So how we do this within Logpoint is through Logpoint UEBA. And so this is how we detect, investigate and respond to incidents relating to insider threats. And we do this through proactive threat intent identification, continuous monitoring, dynamic learning, and things like reduced false alarms. So I'm now going to hand over to Paul, who's going to take you through this as a live demo. Paul, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Gail. So let me share my screen. Okay, so before we go into the demo, I'll just walk you quickly through what we're going to look through today. So essentially what we're going to look at is two examples. So one is a parse the hash attempt, which will involve a particular user called Kevin Stokes. But what this is going to lead to is data exfiltration. So it doesn't really matter how Kevin Stokes, it was either he's being malicious or maybe he clicked on something he shouldn't. Either way, well, with parse the hash, somebody's understood the hash that's been used to try and jump onto a server, and then they're going to reuse that on a different server or the same server to get credentials. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll show you how to spot that kind of thing. We're going to look at a UABA example as well, and the main guy under investigation is a guy called Henry Dave. So we'll just look at both of those things just as an example of how we would deal with insider threats. Basically, the value to you is reducing the time for SOC analysts using search templates in UABA. Essentially, what you're going to do is look at what the common user behavior is, so what people do day to day, and then you're going to take a baseline. And then what you're then going to see is any anomalies compared to the baseline. So as Gail was saying, people logging in at funny times, people trying to log on to servers that they probably didn't log on to before, failed login attempts. There's a whole bunch of things that we can go and look for within UABA to actually decide whether somebody's doing something they shouldn't be, or something that isn't normal. I mean, that's the point. Which will basically increase your compliance. It's going to reduce your risk. since you'll both have an audit of what happened, but also you can get alerts and alarms about, anything that you need to look into. So with our first one, the pass the hash stuff, we're going to start looking at the different alerts that you can get, and then we're going to use search templates to actually see what happened. The way it works always with Logpoint is that we're going to receive data in, we're going to normalize that data, which will basically give common field names. We'll enrich that data typically. So you saw in previous demos that we would have done. We can put threat intel on top of it. We can run playbooks to go and gather extra information. We'll analyze that data using different alert rules. In this case, with the pass the hash stuff, we're going to see 3 different incidents actually corresponding to different components of the pass the hash. So we can look into that. We're going to investigate the incident. We'll find that user Kevin Stokes is involved. And then we'll use a search template. So we're going to look at search templates and see actually what you can do with them to determine whether somebody's doing something they haven't been. And then as a final thing, we're going to look at UABA activity monitoring. And that, again, that will be shown looking at the user called Henry Dave. Now, before I get into this, I'm going to do my usual thing, which is just point you over to the partner portal and technical central. Because in the case of insider threat, there's actually a lot of different things you can talk about. Because if you think about it, you've got, it could come in with phishing or quishing or whatever it is. And you could look at how somebody got compromised in the first place. So assuming that they weren't doing something, nasty. The data exfiltration is what we're going to look at. So how we look at the pass the hash and then see how we would respond to insider threat using the search templates. The threat hunting would also be part of it as well. So showing how people can, use Logpoint as a platform for the threat hunting. The Agent X is showing you what happens on the client end of things. So with Logpoint, you have the ability to look at not only the client or the laptop or the workstation, but also look at what's happening on your servers and so on. So Agent X would be a big part of that. The compliance requirements, obviously. Cloud sources, this is where it starts getting a little bit away from insider threat, the cloud sources, but this is just saying that you could use things like Entra ID as a log source, for example. So it's showing REST API fetcher. Insider threat is what we're going to talk about. So this is UABA and a little bit of what came out of exercise 2. And then there's the usability, so what's in the latest version of Logpoint. So let's jump into Logpoint and start looking at some alerts. So hopefully a lot of this is familiar to some of you. So I'm going to go to the left here and I'm going to go to incidents. And because we're looking at pass the hash, you'll see the different incidents on the right-hand side, but in particular, I'm just going to type the word hash in there, which is looking for incidents to relate to pass the hash. So let's see what we get. And what you'll see is there's repeated alerts because of the way we do the demo system. But essentially, it's 3 alerts that we need to look at, which is this successful overpass the hash attempt, possible pass the hash activity, and then successful lateral movement to administrator using Mimikatz. So these are, this last one for sure is fairly serious. So what we can do is, in all cases, we can either look at the data or the incident data. In this case, we'll just look at incident data. So if I click it, you can see user Kevin Stokes, so we spoke about that already. Here's the domain, and it's looking at what he's basically done. He's, in this case, he's just used lateral movement. And we can see the thing that formed that. I'm not going to do this for everyone. We'll just look at the incident data. But in this first case, if I click view data, it's going to show you basically the thing that was matched, where we were looking at the pass the hash, and it's just, highlighting what it's seen. Let's just, I need to type hash again, so let me do that. If I go to the second one, again, I'm just going to look at, this time I will just look at incident data. So I'm just going to look at it. Again, we can see Kevin Stokes is involved. So another summary of potential pass the hash. And then the final one, we've got incident data. And this time we've got a host name, so we can investigate that. We've got a user. We've got the user ID that was used. And again, it's more lateral movement. So basically, we've got some suspicious stuff. Now, What we can then do with Logpoint is we can start manually looking at those incidents. You could use the search, or what you can use is search templates to save time on doing that search stuff. So all this is a collection of queries that you would type into search, but within widgets. So the one we're going to look at today is suspicious user activity monitoring. So if I click on that, and in all these cases, you can choose your time range on the right. You can see it's pre-populated with the user, so save me remembering what his name was. And then all repos, so all of the different repos that we store the data in. If I click update, it will just update this. So we can see that there's definitely successful past the hash, which we already knew. But what we can look at here is where this guy's logged on. So you can see he's logged on to the email server here, and the file server, and also the desktop. So he's got 3 places that he's managed to log on around the business, which may be normal or maybe not. But then we can start looking at the files that he's accessed. So we've got in this one, Kevin Stokes, he's using this desktop IT. There's a message called process create. And what he's done here, well, you can see probably what's going on here is somebody's executed a command that's executing a particular type of remote Trojan. So it's basically a rat, and the Trojan itself is called trojan_mal.exe. So I think probably what happened with this, and you could link this into other exercises, but it could be that Kevin clicked on something he shouldn't have, and now he's got a Trojan. So then what we can see is, well, getting a Trojan is one thing, but then somebody doing something with that Trojan is something else. So what we can start looking at, you'll see is there's other tabs here that we can look at. So one is called service monitoring. And if I look at this, what this is doing is seeing what happens now on the servers. So in all of the servers that he accessed, so if you remember, it was email and file and desktop, we can see that the antivirus, so this one is checking to see whether antivirus is working or not. It's telling me that on all 3 of those things it was disabled. So that's one of the things it can understand. More importantly, if I look at this next one, it's telling me what different commands were being run on these different servers. So we can see that it's starting MSI server, it's stopping the spooler, it's stopping I think this is the firewall service. So you didn't have to understand what these commands mean, but he's basically disabling things and starting remote tools. None of this is good. So you can just say that you can see that various different commands are being run on the different servers, and you can understand what's going on the particular thing. So in this case, it was on desktop IT. If I look at the logs, this is the file logs in this case. So again, I can look at the file server in this one, and he's accessing these different files. So you can see that he's accessing, well, salary sheet, probably not so good. Employee details, things like product catalog, okay, well, but certainly not salary sheets, and probably doesn't have access to do that. And then on the desktop itself, you can actually see, this is more about what happened on the desktop. So you can see that he's got some different files. He's using a password extractor. He's kind of zipping stuff up and adding, you can see the action 2, which is quite nice. So it's showing you what he did with these different files on these different servers. So again, it's a lot of not only logs, but something to look at, something to investigate. The final one is if I look at the file downloads and just click update. Again, this is a different type of graph, but again, it's showing me the user, the process that's doing it. So he's in Firefox in this case, and he's running different queries for HR files. So this is his access to different FTP shares, I suppose, around the network, just to understand what went on those. And the good news with all of this stuff is it doesn't matter if it's encrypted or not, because you would have got this information on an agent that's running on the machine itself. So you'll be able to see all of that stuff. And if we look at what he downloaded, well, on the desktop, well, here's his download path. Financial statements, employee details, the salary sheet. So we saw all this on the previous slide as well. Mimikatz, so this is how he ended up getting, this is the pass the hash thing, so it captures the hashes, and then you can replay them on different servers to see if the people use the same password elsewhere. And then we've got the malware itself. So you'd have to do a little bit more investigation than this and look at the stuff underneath, but I think pretty much you get the idea that something bad is going on with Kevin Stokes, and he's definitely worth an extra look. So that's what we can do with search templates. So the idea of this, just remember these are all queries. So if you want to look at these queries, underneath it's showing you here the queries that are run, and it just shows you as a pretty graph. So you can actually run these on the searches at any one time, which is quite nice. So that's the search templates. The other piece to this is the UABA. And that part, it'll be a different user, but we'll look into what you can do there. If I click on the UABA part of this, so this is the piece that's monitoring what's happening on the network, and it's looking for usual behavior. So I'm going to click on Henry Dave here, and I think it sometimes takes a little while to come up. So let me just get it back. Here we go. So what we're seeing is the user that I clicked on, which was Henry Dave. It's just the examples of the different things that we spot. So the idea of UABA is we monitor normal action. So what you do day in, day out, and what other users are doing day in, day out. And what we're looking for here is anomalies. So somebody doing something that's out of the statistically normal criteria of what he would do. So if you see some examples of this as I go down, you'll see that Henry Dave, he logged into this flare.logpoint.in a significantly high number of times, but it's compared to other people. So it's comparing to himself, but it's also comparing to other people. And again, if we carry on, he's got failed access attempts on a share. And then he had, so basically I think he got to it, but he's had a couple of days of failed access to this drive as well. So we can look at that in a minute. This one's pretty good. So smoking gun almost. Henry Dave sent 1.31 gig in an hour to this proxy on first access, which is way larger than what we'd expect anybody to send anyone anywhere. So that's just an example where he might be exfiltrating data. Same thing here, it's looking at drive access shares. So this time he accessed the share 38 times in an hour. And then we have Henry Dave worked in this hour, which is unusual. But with all of these things, we can look into it in more detail. So that's kind of nice too. So if I pick a couple, let's pick the 1.31 gig. So if I click on the little plus to the left, what happens here is it's now giving me what he observed Henry Dave was doing, what the other user's maximum was. So you can see I've got 1.3 compared to 226K, and the expected highest for anybody was 766. You can see that all of this is above what we would expect. And on the right-hand side, it gives you a more detailed analysis of why we're calling this out as a problem. And the cool thing about all of this is you can create an incident. So that's what we were looking at previously, an incident with the Mimikatz. So you could actually create it straight from here, which is quite nice. And you can look at those events. Or if you want to look at the events themselves, you can click Explore All Events. So I'll just click one just to show you. But basically what happens is, it's all searches. It puts the search up, and then it tells you the events that made up that information. So you can scroll through and you can see what was going on with it, which is quite nice. So let's go back to this. The other one I'll look at was this Henry Dave worked in this hour, but basically they're all similar. They'll give you, here's the normal, here's what Henry Dave did, and then you can compare the two and then figure out whether he was doing something terrible. So Henry Dave worked in this hour. So again, it throws up a graph of here's when Henry Dave normally works. So the stuff in gray, but the stuff in purple, you see here that he's kind of logged on looks like 11 o'clock at night, where normally he wouldn't do that. And again, you can look at creating an incident or looking at the raw events. So this is all quite cool. It's you'll see that there's plenty of different tabs that we can go click through, but essentially there's an overall risk which just tells you what was happening at any one time. You can look at users, so that's what we were just doing. So looking at Henry Dave, but you can see there's other users that were doing stuff that maybe we're interested in. We can look at the different shares, so who accessed what share. So again, Henry Dave was looking at this network shares IT drive. So again, we can look at what that was doing and whether it was anomalous or not. So that one would come up with a risk score of like 35, which is a medium score, simply because it was coming in the middle of the criteria that it would use. If I look at the servers, it's the same thing there. We can look at the access to the servers. So Henry Dave logged into Flare whenever it was a high number of times. And if we look at that, it tells you it was Active Directory, and he authenticated an unusual number of times. And again, you can look at the incidents, or you can see the averages compared for himself or compared to others, and then determine whether that was bad behavior or not. So to summarize, that's pretty much the idea. There was a website on which you can see this. It's a similar idea as well. So this is just where he connected to a proxy and started sending some stuff. And again, we can look at those logs. So that was it with Uaber. It's essentially, it's understanding what normal behavior is and then comparing it to what we observe from all of the things we collect around the network to determine whether something is bad happening. And if that is the case, you can start investigating it. We can link this stuff with SOAR as well. So if you have something that comes up on Uaber, we can scroll through and decide whether it can create an incident or whether it creates a case, and all of those good things if you want to go do it. So it's you can automate this to some degree as well, which is pretty good. So I think that's it for the demo. So Gail, I'm going to hand it back to you. Just to go through the
Thanks, Paul. That was really interesting. So we do have one question, and you showed at the beginning about the Technical Central value-based demo. How do people access that?
Okay, so you have to be a partner, and we will basically give you access to it once you become a partner. So actually, you could either email myself or Gail, and we'll get you access if you're the partner. So Gail, do they have email addresses, or you have a? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I can certainly send that. So perfect. I think actually there was no other questions. Well, actually, I think we might have one more. Quick check. No. So I think you've probably answered all the questions in your demo. So thanks very much for that. Just before we finish, just want to just provide you with some further information. So we do have a lot of information regarding UABA. So if you visit the Logpoint website, there is a section around UABA. We also have a blog. So the statistics that I mentioned at the beginning of the session are all part of a blog that we have on the blog part of our website. And the webinar, as I mentioned, will be available on demand over the next couple of days on our webinar page. Just before we finish, I just wanted to sort of share some more webinars with you. So today's webinar is part of our Maximising Your Investment in Logpoint series. So we've done many of these over the last few months, and the objective of these is to provide you with more information that if you have Logpoint, what types of things can you do with it, and some of the cybersecurity issues that it can solve. So as you can see here, we've done a number over the last few months, ranging from threat hunting to cloud security to data exfiltration and endpoint and automation investigation and response. These are all available on our website. They all follow a very similar format to what we've done today. We just start off talking briefly about the topic, and then one of our sales engineers takes you through a demo. So I would really encourage you to watch them. They're 30 minutes in length, and they do provide you with a lot of information about how you can maximise your investment in Logpoint. So again, so just leaves us to thank you very much for your time today. We hope very much that you found it interesting. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to us. Thank you very much, Paul, for a very interesting demo. Yeah, have a great day, and speak to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.